Welcome back, wannabes and creators, to another episode of The Complete Creative, the podcast that helps you build and sustain a better creative business. Today on the show, we have author Rachel Kelly. Rachel is the writer of the Colorworld series and the founder of Colorworld Books. Now, I'm going to be very honest. I had no idea that Colorworld was a series before it was an amazing art studio. So that's on me. But I was recently able to be on a couple of panels with Rachel and the Colorworld brand. And I was just so thrilled to pick up the Colorworld book and really, really devour it. It's quite good. But what I know Colorworld as is a place that does really cool metallic bookmarks and prints and just all sorts of other art stuff. And I wanted to have her on because her brand really shows how to expand beyond simply books, or to make a brand that is really cohesive with your novels and your other art, and using all of that to push everything and market yourself and your company and your book series. It really is such a lovely book series, and I cannot wait for you to hear us talk about it, talk about the Colorworld brand, and a whole lot more. Before we do, I want to remind you that The Complete Creative is a whole expansive site full of epic blog posts, courses, and a whole lot more. One of my favorite posts is about how to succeed as a self-published author, where I literally break down all of the data that I've been able to find about how to build a successful self-publishing career. And you can read all about it at thecompletecreative.com/self-published author. That's thecompletecreative.com/self-published author. All right. Now that that's done, let's get on with the show. Take it away, Rachel. Tell us what you're passionate about these days.
Right now, I am passionate about commitment. I have had a lot of problems lately with people not being committed, saying they're going to do something, not doing it. And it seems like inevitably it's a result of emotions. People start to feel a certain way, and then they let those emotions break their commitments, rather than the commitment being the thing that keeps their promises. So I'm fired up about that right now. I think that when we make a commitment, we should have in mind that there are going to be all kinds of obstacles that create emotions. There's going to be people problems, but when you commit to something, you say, screw the emotions. I'm going to do this thing because I said I was going to do it. So that's what's got me fired up lately.
Yeah, it's I've been fired up about this for years, but it feels like now in this post quarantine or during quarantine time, people are taking on even more commitments, and I found myself taking on far less because I know what it means to finish that commitment.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I think part of the problem is quarantine. So there's so much less opportunity to speak to people in person. And we've sort of evolved this culture where we can't just get on a phone call with somebody. And I feel like, phone call, video call, something where you can hear somebody's voice can really quickly get to the bottom of an issue. And people are I don't know if it's confrontational to them or uncomfortable, or they just can't think on their feet quickly enough to speak about something. But people they want to work out problems over text. And I'm like, this is not what this is for. So Brad has this saying, jump on a quick call. Him and Bryce Papenbrick are always talking about if anything goes remotely wrong in a text thread, I think we should jump on a quick call. And that's code for this is not going the way we want it to. We need to clear some things up.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And, as two people who do a lot of conventions, I find a lot of the nudging that I can do with people is to finish their commitment is kind of cut now, because I can't just see them at a convention, or if someone's a month behind, I can't be like, oh, I'm just going to see them in 2 weeks now.
Right. Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, absolutely. It's really difficult with our business. When we are handling customers, like we only have the mail system. We only have email. Like I'm not going to be able to make it up to this person if something goes wrong with their order or whatever. Like I'm not going to be able to do that in person. So there is definitely some frustration, at least on my end, that I can't do some of the things that I used to do on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, one of the other annoying things right now is like the post office is screwing with me because I'll be sending something. Like, for instance, I went to the post office on Tuesday this week and I dropped off about 10 packages and they all still say they're in pre-shipment, all of them. And I'm like, that's not true. I literally took all of these to the post office and handed them personally to the person, and they handed me back like a blank, like an empty cart. So like I don't have access to them, and now I'm still getting emails from people.
Yeah. What's going on? I tracked my package. What's happening?
Right. And like, how is this in pre-shipment? Like, this is a gift. This is a gift. It doesn't take like a week to get somewhere. And I'm like, I can't, like, I don't have the thing. Like, for sure the post office has them. And what I found is they're like, it'll be a week before I actually get any notification that these things are like out of pre-shipment. And I'm like, this is so frustrating because it's not my fault and I can't do anything.
Yeah. Well, speaking of post offices and being passionate about something, I've discovered through the pandemic that a huge portion of the population in America has never walked into a post office and shipped a package. We have to ship prints to famous people and then get that thing packaged back up and shipped back to us. And a huge number of those individuals have never actually walked into a post office and don't like have any clue what, like some of them are taking USPS packages to UPS or they're like asking, do I take this to FedEx? And I'm like, it literally said it's like a flat rate. Like, how do you, so yeah, the post office is, I wasn't aware, and maybe I'm living under a rock or something, that it's shipping a package is not a basic skill. So I've been really shocked by that because that's our business, is shipping things.
Yeah, I have to go to this. I learned something about the post office. We're just going to talk about post office for the next hour, I guess. But so when you print out a postal label, there is like the address, right? There's the return address, but then there's the shipping address. And like if you're shipping from like 90807, you're not supposed to bring it to the post office that's like a 90814 because they don't get credit for it. So I have been shipping a lot of boxes for this Kickstarters that we've been doing. And I there's only one distribution center in our area that you can actually bring like that you can get a cart and like bring a couple of hundred books in at a time. Otherwise you have to like go into the one place and then like wait in line and then like have them open the back door for you, and like it's a pain. So there's one facility in our area that you can get like one of those like mail carts and just bring it to your car and fill everything up and bring it into the post office. However, it is not in the same shipping zip code yeah. And so I got chewed out last time I tried to do this, and I was like, it's been 5 years of me doing this. I never knew this before. No one has ever told me this thing before.
Crazy. I know exactly what you're talking about too. Like I learned that recently as well, because we have a post office across the river in Illinois. And so everything we ship out of here where we live has that Illinois zip code on there. But I found it's dependent on the postal worker. So if the postal worker is a stickler for the rules, they're going to put up a stink about it. Whereas like people who are like, hey, we're people and we want to help other people ship things, are like, they don't like freak out about the fact that the return address is not that post office. So I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't know why that is. I'm like, I don't know, get brownie points they get paid more for how many packages they ship out. I don't know how that works.
So here's what I was told. I was told that when if they have a big shipment, the post office will call and say, hey, we need more help. And the post the postal, like the whoever, like the postmaster general or whoever the person is, they will look at how many packages are being shipped from that zip code, and that shipping zip code is what they use to determine whether they've had a big influx of orders. And so what that person then says is like, we need more help. And then whoever is supposed to be giving more people says, oh, you're not really shipping that much stuff. And it's because that shipping zip code is what they use to determine how many packages are going through a facility.
Huh.
So yes, this person was very specific to me about why exactly she was mad.
So what did she suggest?
She said that you have to, like, so I have a mailbox in a zip code. She's like, just change that mailbox, like wherever you do your like return mailbox, because your PO box or wherever, to this zip code, and then you're fine. You just can't. And also, apparently, if you use like Easy Ship or another software, like you can change just that shipping zip code, because it's supposed to be different than your return address, because your return address is not necessarily where you're shipping the package from. Like our local post office is like very small. Like if I brought 100 boxes to them, they would be like their entire facility would just be my boxes. So like I have to go to a bigger facility. So I'm just going to, when my mailbox ends, take it to like wherever the zip code is over there and just get my mailbox there instead.
It's gotta be easier than that. Gotta be.
It really does. Like, so you're an author, I'm an author. Like, did you feel kind of like short shrifted? Like, I remember when I was a kid, the authors that I would see in movies and TV would just be kind of like lounging around all day, like eating bonbons and staring out at a lake. And if I was told how much supply chain logistics was necessary in order to be an author, I don't know if I would have gone into this line of work.
I don't know. Well, first of all, when I was a kid, I had no designs of being an author. So I wasn't considering like what their life looked like. But I will say that when I decided to self-publish, I definitely had to know something about, that you're going to be handling all that back end stuff yourself. You're going to be the person going to the post office and printing the labels out, or, I can't always afford like this staff to do all of these nitty gritty details for me. I don't know that I considered it until I decided that I was going to self-publish. But even at that point, we worked in financial services. My husband and I ran a financial services company, and we did a lot of shipping then too. So I don't know. I guess I just sort of like how it happened. I haven't been shocked or surprised or like disgruntled by it. But again, like I said, as a kid, I definitely wasn't thinking I was going to be an author.
Well, this is the good place to maybe go back a little bit, because I always have this thing where I forget to introduce the person or let them introduce themselves until we're talking for about 15 minutes. And it's been just about 15 minutes. So I'd love for you to go back and sort of talk about your like what you wanted to do as a kid, your upbringing, and what brought you into starting Colorworld.
So I as a kid, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I definitely did not know. I didn't have, like, all my friends are like, I'm going to be a dolphin trainer, and like, I'm going to work. I feel like the big thing when I was like, was like, I want to go into ocean science, or I want to be a marine biologist. Like that was, I feel like everybody wanted to be a marine biologist. I didn't know what I wanted to be. But when I went to college and I had to make a decision, I actually did exactly what Wendy does in the book. And I looked up what's going to make me the most money. And also, and when I saw that it was computer science, I was like, I bet there aren't that many chicks in computer science. I was like, I bet I'll stand out as a chick in computer science. So I'm going to do this thing that no other chicks do and be surrounded by dweebs. And I'm going to be like the badassest programmer that there ever was. And so that was Like that was how I picked my major in college, was had a good income potential, and also I could stand out in my field as someone like, I honestly, Russell, I love when I break people's idea of me, where they perceive that I'm a certain way, and then they find out this other thing about me, and they're like, I had no idea. I wouldn't have placed you that. So I like breaking the mold. So my choice in major was like literally a result of that. And so I did finish my degree in computer science, my undergraduate. And then when I was done, I was like, I don't really think I want to do this. And I always tell people, especially aspiring writers, that in college, there was this choice between so they make you take liberal studies, right? So there was creative writing and I think it was astronomy. I don't know. It was two creative things you could choose from. And the other one seemed more terrible than creative writing. I was like, I guess I'll do the less terrible one. So I picked creative writing, and I made like a C in that class, and it was horrible. And I hated the whole thing. We read like Stephen King, and the instructor was really cool, but I had like zero, like zip interest in telling stories. I wanted to be a badass computer programmer. So, it wasn't until after I'd had 3 kids that I was like, I like my kids, but this isn't really like filling my tank. Like I'm not like fulfilled. I'm starting to like, I'm really worn down. I'm not actually that much of a nurturer. And I kind of felt like something was wrong with me. Like, why, women are supposed to be nurturers, women are supposed to love kids, and I just didn't love it. And so I had sort of this awakening in which I realized that I hadn't really developed any real talent. All through, I never really had passion. So your question at the beginning, I wasn't really passionate about anything. And so I really wanted to be passionate about something. And so I did some soul searching, and woke up one morning and was like, I'm going to write a book. So I did. And I like absolutely loved it. I stayed up all night. I had 3 little toddlers, like little kids, and they put them to bed, and I'd stay up until 2, 3, 4 in the morning, sleep for a few hours, try to get them down for a nap, write some more. So I wrote like 3 books in like 6 weeks, three drafts of the first drafts of my first 3 books in 6 weeks. And that's how I figured out what I wanted to do with life.
That's awesome. And really, like, I love the part where you got to see in creative writing, because I always tell people, like, I did not do well in creative writing. Like, every time I took a creative writing class in school, I did very poorly at it. Like, I did not understand like the assignment even, like satire. I really wanted to be good at satire, and I just wasn't. And like everything that I tried in writing, it just did not connect with me, except my mother kept saying, like, when I was starting to become a writer, it's like, oh, you were always writing. Like, you were always writing. Like, you were always writing when you were a kid. And I did not believe her until she actually showed me recently that, like, oh, I was really writing. And look, I had all these things published, and I had these poems published, and I had these like things in the newspaper published, and like maybe I was better than I thought, but all I remember is like getting C's in all of my creative writing classes.
Yeah, it was definitely, I hated it. And I like remember, and some memories are just so clear because it was just like a slap in the face. One of the other gals from that creative writing class, and this was at the time when there was like instant messenger, and so we were all on our computers, so we had like our creative writing class, would communicate via instant messenger. And she's like, oh, did everybody get their grades? I got an A. I think it was pretty easy to get an A. I mean, I think that's pretty standard, like everybody getting an A. And like, I was like over here, like silent, nobody noticed me, like fulfilling a writing assignment and being coherent. I just simply did not have anything to say at that stage in my life. And I think that is what kept me from doing well. I just didn't have enough experience, didn't have enough to draw on, didn't have enough input. And it wasn't until I'd lived some of life that I started to be like, I got something to say, and I'm going to say it in the story.
So yeah, I mean, I really love the that like you didn't have anything to say, because I wrote just absolutely dreadful books and stories in college, and I feel the same way. I feel like, life had to cut me down a little bit, or I had to like learn something about like myself, or just I had to have some bent happen to me before I was like, no, I have like a thing to say finally.
Yeah. It's definite. Like if you don't have any, I remember trying to write the story, the assignments that we were given, and everything just felt so contrived. And I think that's what makes a difference is if you're not passionate about the thing that you're writing, the story ends up being contrived, and everybody can tell that. That being said, though, and we kind of talked about this when you were on our panel, but I didn't. I didn't have any confidence in the story that I had written when I wrote it. And so I actually went and took several classes in creative writing after writing the first drafts of my novel, because I just felt like, okay, I'm not going to be like, I can't assume that this is amazing. I'm going to like go learn something about writing. And so I did, and I actually ended up being really good at it. And I'm really good at writing creative nonfiction, and it comes very easily to me, but fiction doesn't. And so I've always, I guess, wanted to go after the thing that's harder. And I actually like fiction. So yeah, I did take some classes and try to like get some skills before, and then really ended up rewriting those drafts that I had written initially. But the story is essentially the same.
That's so funny that you talk about how, like, you going for the harder thing, because I think maybe I was talking on your show when I was on with you, or maybe it was on a show that I recorded between then and now. But I was like, fiction, nonfiction has always come so easily. Like, it's so easy for me to like write an article about like a thing that I already know that thing exists. Like, all I have to be is like, how to do this thing, and then you just list all of the ways to do that thing. It's like there's a pattern, and like it's researchable. And whereas fiction is like, no matter, it's the only thing that I've ever done that has never gotten easier. Like, it is as hard to write a book now as it was when I started writing books. And yes, even with all of the knowledge that I have in it, it is still dang near impossible to get a book out there in the way that like I am comfortable with. And there's still a slog. I write more words now than I did before, but it's still like the same slog. And there's something about that slog that is the thing that enriches me, I guess. Do you feel that too?
Well, it's the overcoming. Like when you overcome that, it's like the best feeling where you're like, you finally got through it and you're looking at it and you're like, this is great. And I did it, and I didn't give up on it, and I kept my commitment, and I got this thing done, but then for me, it's like, if it's a nonfiction piece and there's a formula and, good grammar, and there's, some great words out there for synonyms to like describe things. And it's all very formulaic to me. But with fiction, it's like, the work you put in and then to come out on the other side is just like, to me, it's like that aha moment that I live for. If it was so easy to do, I don't know that I would enjoy it. I wouldn't, because you wouldn't get that that feeling of overcoming.
Yeah, and then so you have that first hit, right? And then you have this, for me, that you have the second hit is like when somebody reads it and actually connects with like this weird, completely alien thing that you made. And you're like, yeah, I guess there's minotaurs that live in LA now. And like, there are women who like can just touch you and kill you and like enter this other world. And people, like, when people buy that thing and you're like, wow, that's freaking incredible. Like, I just literally made something up completely that is foreign to the universe and made you like get into it.
Yeah, that's always weird to me. I still am not used to it. I'm still sort of like, are you sure you like it? I mean, I don't say that out loud, but I'm still in my head. I'm like, are you sure? Like, is this really, or do you love it? Do you really love it? Are you just telling me that? I don't know. It's not really so much that I think that my writing is bad as much as I think that the things that are in my writing are so specific to me. And so they're so nuanced to Rachel and how Rachel sees the world that, and I'm so aware of how everybody views the world differently, that when someone connects with my book that much, it's almost like uncomfortable, like they're too close, like they know too much. Because if they've connected with it, that means they resonate with something they've read. And that means that me and that person, we share something intimate. And to me, that's always been uncomfortable.
Yeah, for me, that's like that's the drug. That is the drug. Like the work is the work is the like doing the writing the book, but the drug to me is like, wow, like you connected, like this is so weird, and like that you connected with it is like so magically impossible to believe that like it kind of makes me believe in magic in the world in a way, because like it just shouldn't. I shouldn't be able to write some very, very weird thing and then send it off and then have words on a page like resonate with somebody in like Bangladesh. Like it just shouldn't happen. Like it's just like, and then like, but like that it does. I don't know. For me, that like there's magic in that it is unexplainable to me. Like a psychologist can tell me why that happens, but I still like don't believe there should be a like real way for like me to connect with just words on a page to somebody random in a different part of the world.
Yeah, like to be understood by somebody that you've never met before. Yeah, that's I don't know. And maybe it's just because I'm more of a guarded person in general, like in person, and it takes me a long time to like really like people and then share with people. And when I do, so I have a very small select group of friends that I would, call in case of emergency, but when it comes to writing, like here I am putting, my editor said once, and I've always remembered it. She's like, publishing your book is like letting people rifle through your underwear drawer. And I've always felt like that's really true. It's kind of like, we all know we wear underwear, but there's just something weird about people going through your underwear or doing your laundry for you. That's just this other level of like closeness or like exposure. And so for me, that's something that I still experience even after, I don't know, what's it been, like 7 years since I put Colorworld out there.
So this brings me to like the thing that I wondered about when I read this book, because you were talking about being hyper specific to Wendy. And when you talk about being guarded, is the fact that Wendy literally can't touch other people like a manifestation of that emotion inside of yourself?
Oh, yes. Yes. Every time people ask me, where did you get the idea? Blah, blah, blah. I always answer, tell them a story. My dad had cancer in like 2008, and he was changing medications. So he had to get off of what he was on. And so he was in a lot of pain. My mom, we weren't living in the same state. My mom would email all of us girls and like tell us, what was happening. One of her emails, she said, you need to make sure that you touch the people that you care about, because there's something that's communicated. She's like, your dad can't talk to me. He really probably can't even hear me because he's in so much pain. But when I touch him, I feel like he knows what I'm saying. And so make sure that, you make an effort to touch the people that you love every day. And I just remember being like, I hate touching people. Like, I don't want to touch anybody. And also, I had like 3 little kids at the time. And even with my kids just like sitting on the couch with me, and kids are like, they're like an entourage. They just want to like pile on top of you and get as close as humanly possible. And I would get like anxiety over my own children being around me. And it's not that they made me nervous. It was just like, I felt like trapped, or like they were sucking something from me, and I just couldn't figure out what that was. So, Wendy's disability was definitely my way of exploring this feeling that I had when people touched me. And I thought there has to be some explanation, because I know, because I have a master's in psychology, that touching kids is important. and that if they never have skin contact, like that damages them. And so how is something both necessary but also really uncomfortable for me? And that was definitely where I took it when I gave Wendy that particular handicap.
Was it also on some level freeing to be able to say in a book, like, you can't touch me and there's this reason for it?
No, because Wendy, while she has that ability, and there's certainly some things that I'm like Wendy in a way. There's many ways that I'm not like Wendy, and Wendy, I always felt like she wanted to touch people. I never felt like Wendy was the kind of person who is not. I always saw her as a touchy feely person. And so when I'm writing her, I have to put myself in her shoes and feel her angst and her disappointment at what she can't have. And so I don't think I spent any time trying to figure out, being happy that like I could be like, no, I can't touch you. Like, yeah, no, I spent most of my time really trying to get in Wendy's head.
Yeah. So I have to ask this question because it's the thing that like I found so surprising about this book is like the premise is that like Wendy and Gabe, well, one of the premises is like Wendy can't touch Gabriel or Gabe, the love interest, but like it was one of the most sensual parts of the book. Also, like the sexual tension and the way that she described wanting to touch him was like very sexually charged, and I wonder how you were able to like make this thing where like literally the premise is she can't touch this guy, but still make it like, I don't want to say oozing sex, but like have that feeling of like sexuality.
Elicit that feeling in the reader. Yeah. Yeah. I know what you're saying. I've both received criticism and praise for those scenes. And which was funny because where I received criticism for it, the person was this really conservative religious person and thought that I was, I took it too far. And I'm like, well, they didn't even touch. So like, what would you want? Like, nobody's naked, nobody's whatever. I guess I really, like I said, when I write a character's scene and a character's going through something particularly emotional, I really try to put myself in their shoes and imagine it. So I had to imagine all of those feelings. What it would be like if you were in love with somebody and you were kept from doing that. And I've certainly been in relationships, so I can at least know what that feels like. And maybe not that I couldn't touch the person, but certainly, when you just meet somebody and you really dig this person and you're not really sure what the boundaries are, and you kind of are like, you really want this person, but you aren't sure how they feel, and like you're not sure how far you should go and what's appropriate, and blah 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 blah. So there's all these hang-ups that occur. I can still tap into that idea of like not touching somebody, not getting close to somebody because you're not sure if it's a good idea, or you're not sure what the outcome is going to be at the end of it, or, oh, I just met this person or whatever. So, I think that's something that I'm actually really good at as a writer is eliciting emotion. Because certainly what I've heard more often than not is that I do a good job bringing those emotions out of people. Like they literally feel what the character feels. Because of the words that I wrote. And so that's something that I always focus on, that I needed people to understand how she felt. And the only way I needed to do that was to just get really detailed in the description of what that felt like.
Yeah. So I talk a lot about that structure breeds creativity instead of the other way around. Instead of I was listening to Frank Gehry do a masterclass, and he was saying that, in every one of his structures, whether it's the Guggenheim or the Disney Concert Hall, like he has many things that he's got gravity and city codes and county codes and acoustics and all of these rules that he has to stay between. But like in that, he has 10 to 15% of to make this structure sort of unique and creative and create. And for me, it feels like that the fact that you put those constraints around, like, this person can't touch this other person, but I still have to have this like sexual tension between them, like, actually worked to your advantage. Like, it's almost like the constraints of that made it a very original, like, telling of what would happen in that situation. Do you feel like that at all, or that, like, the structure, that, like, the constraints you put on it actually help your creativity?
Yes. But I guess one of the things that I found really the most difficult. So being able to explain or make the reader feel what it's like, sexually, was certainly a lot easier than impressing upon the reader the fact that she was deadly. I always felt like people never took seriously, and particularly in book 2, which you haven't read yet, but in book 2, there's a lot more discussion of the fact that she's deadly, and what is safe and what's not safe. And it was really hard to impress upon the mind of the reader that this person is deadly and they should stay away from people. I felt like, in talking to fans, I always get the impression that they're like, what's her problem? Like, Gabe's just trying to be close to her. And I'm like, dude, she could kill somebody by touching them. Like, give her a break. Like, she's really, I feel like people never really grasped that and never had the right amount of empathy for her situation, and kind of felt like she was overthought things and spent too much time in fear. And I'm like, to me, I just, so that was what was really hard for me to write. The part of, like, what it feels like to be in love and want to touch somebody came way easier than that part. I think mostly because, like, I've never been in that situation where if I brush past somebody the wrong way, like, there goes, they're gone.
Well, it's also just like well, again, I've only read the first book, but it seems like that's a very internal monologue thing that she deals with throughout the book. Whereas the stuff with Gabe and other people, there's 2 people in that scene, and, like, it's for me, it's a lot easier to beef up something with 2 characters in it than, like, someone's inner monologue when they're dealing with this stuff by themselves.
Nobody wants that. You gotta give the reader a break, man. You gotta, like, get out of their head. And I always, whenever I feel like I'm in a character's head too much, I always, like, bring in a new character, like, bring in someone else to break up all this, because nobody wants to read about how Wendy is really struggling with this idea that she may never touch anybody again. You got to, like, see some other points of view and see it from outside of Wendy and looking in. And, but that is, when we talked about first person versus third person, I felt like, at least for that story, the first person just really was the only way to, like, to be able to get that empathy from the reader about her condition.
Yeah, we talked about this when we were together on that panel about, like, the thing that I think is missing from the Hunger Games movies that, like, totally I don't know if it destroys, but it definitely distorts the point of the Hunger Games, was that the fact that you were in her head, seeing, like, feeling her killing people and feeling what it meant to, like, be in these situations, like completely changes the dynamic of, like, her, like, badass hardcore killer in the movies to, like, this, like, damaged, wounded person who, in the 3rd book, like, the whole 3rd book is all her, like, PTSD about her killing all of these people and trying to come to terms with it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I remember reading. I feel that way about The Host. Did you ever read The Host? It was Stephanie Meyer's, like, really good book that she wrote after Twilight. But The Host, I think, is, like, just fantastic as a book. And she has the same thing where so much of the story happens inside the character's head. And then when they made the movie, it was not it didn't translate because like you couldn't be in her head on screen. Like there was only so much dialogue, like narration they could put in the movie without it being too much, which they did. They ended up using some narration to like fill in the gaps. But as far as the book, you spend like a large portion of the book inside the character's head.
Yeah, I feel the same way about like the translation that Peter Jackson did of Lovely Bones. Like Lovely Bones is one of my absolute favorite books of all time. I don't know if you know the book, but it like follows a girl who gets killed in the original, in like the first chapter of the book, and like she goes to heaven and she's narrating like her afterlife, and like she's looking down on the people and all of these. It's like a beautifully written book, and because you can only have so much of that in a movie, it like distorts and kind of destroys the fact that like the whole book is about her coming to terms with her afterlife and like pulling away and being able to like grow, and like can you grow after you, like it's this beautiful allegory that like gets distorted because like movies don't work well in first person.
Yeah, you're right. It's a sad thing, but then at the same time you can have some really badass action scenes that are really hard to describe and like hit the reader in the chest in a book. Like it's really hard. For me, at least, action scenes are one of the things I like dread writing. I hate writing them, but I know that they're necessary. And I don't know. I kind of wish like we could come up with some sort of hybrid, like a movie book. Like, I'm not sure how that would look, but one of the things I hope that someone comes up with is a way to put like music in a book, like where you're reading and it changes based on what you're reading, so that you still get that cinematic effect that you generate in a movie,
Right.
but you get it in a book. Yeah, like so something like that helps combine what's so great about movies with what's so great about books.
Well, there's a beautiful book called Diary of a Teenage Girl, and it is a diary, but then it's also a comic book at the same time. So like you'll be reading 2 or 3 chapters, and then the next chapter will be a comic or it'll be an illustration, and it's meant to like evoke the feeling of a diary. And it's very hard to read because it like literally reads like a 16-year-old girl, like not like how people read a 16-year-old girl, but in the way that a 16-year-old girl would actually like behave. And but the idea of having like a chapter and then like a comic book, a scene, and then like a illustration, and then a poem, and all of these things that like going back and forth with them is quite something. I wish they did more outside of first reader books, because they do it all the time in first reader books, like Dogman and Captain Underpants are like all this kind of like hybrid. But when you get to YA and above YA, it like you never see it.
Yeah. Diary of a Wimpy Kid, I think, is like that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will also say, when you told me that you wrote this book in first person present, I was like, oh God, I hate first person present books. But I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna read the book because like she was in like I really like Rachel, and I connected with like the things she said. So I'm gonna give it a shot. And like I have to admit, like this specific book written in first person present really did like draw me into the story more in a way that I am very rarely happens when I read first person present stories.
Well, good. I actually did write it in first person past tense originally, and I just didn't like it, and I ended up changing the entire thing. I had to go through the whole book and change all the tenses when I finally published it, and I liked it much better. And but the books that I'm currently working on in the series, there is still in present tense, but a lot of them are third person. So I don't know though. I'm still super partial. Like I still prefer, sometimes I'll be writing and I'm like, oh, I really would like if I was writing this in first person. Like I really want to write this in first person. I'm like, no, it's a third person book. Got to write it in third person. I don't know. I don't know. It may just be me, and that's my thing.
Well, we talked about this during the podcast that the panel we did together, where it's like, I just don't like third person. I just don't like reading it. Like, I don't like writing it. Like, I want to be in that person's head. Like, I want to be in, and I have people, we were on that panel with Lance Conrad, who had like the literal opposite opinion, but writers who have this sort of omniscient Stephen King-y, George R. Martin kind of like, I'm very dispassionate. I'm just going to report this like a journalist. Just like, I always am bored. I'm just bored. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'm not reading a newspaper. I know, because I read newspapers a lot, and like I read them for a very specific purpose. When I read these kind of books, I'm looking for like the struggle of a human being, like, or a fairy or some other thing. And like, I want to know the struggle. Like the plot is not incidental, but like in many ways, it's just a way to get the character to react to a thing that's happening.
Yeah, and to get them to do something.
Right. It's like, I don't care. Like, I don't so much care what it is to do. I care about the conflict that results from inside of the character, to that comes from her ability to then overcome that challenge.
Yes. I definitely, I agree wholeheartedly. That's my modus operandi in life, is to understand people. I mentioned I have a degree in psychology, and I didn't get it because I wanted to go like be a therapist. I got it because I am interested in how people think and why they do the things that they do. And I feel like if I'm going to spend my time reading a book, I want to feel like I came to some understanding about humanity. And I don't read, I mean, I enjoy reading and it's pleasurable to me, but I very quickly will put down a series or stop a book if I feel like if I feel like the character isn't going somewhere, isn't developing as a person. I mean, they can have fantastic plot and there can be stuff happening, but if I feel like the character is just not progressing, or isn't revealing enough to me to understand them, like I get very disconnected from that character, and then I just don't care. And so I have a hard time picking the book back up again.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, going back to movies, the older I get, the less I enjoy movies. I literally will not choose to watch a movie, and the only time I actually watch movies is when we go as a family with our kids to see this or that. Or Brad really wants to see this movie and he rents it, so I make myself sit down and watch the movie. But as a general rule, like, I am not a movie watcher. I don't enjoy them. I don't feel like most of the time I get somewhere at the end of them. If I do sit down and watch a movie, it'll be something like historically based that talks about what this person did in history and like, the kind of things that win awards and stuff like that. But, Avengers and Batman and, these movies that are coming out with like snappy dialogue and like big action scenes, I'm like, just not into it.
I really love things like Lady Bird and like independent movies, like the opposite of what I write, like small independent movies, but it's the same reason, because like it generally talks about like what it means to be a human and not like what it means to blow something up and like be really cool and badass.
Yeah. How clever can I be? Like I enjoy clever dialogue. I write, I hope, pretty clever dialogue, particularly when Wendy's brother Ezra comes on the scene. He's like my outlet for that. But more than anything, I want to feel like I learned something. I learned something at the end. I would love to watch Avengers and feel like I learned something. And so the movies that I enjoy, usually I've watched by myself because like Brad's not into it. Like I think the last one I watched for myself was that one about the Supreme Court justice, the woman who and
God,
me right now.
I forget. I mean, it was like the Ruth Bader Ginsburg, like the origin story one, like the one. Yeah, that one was great. Oh God, I miss going to movies. Okay, so we are nearing the end of our time together, amazingly. But I want to talk to you about the overall Colorworld brand and have you talk about like like the books and the overall like experience of Colorworld, or like this is your opportunity to sort of pitch the thing that you do?
Okay, the thing that I do, I write Colorworld, which is a book series. Originally was supposed to be 7 books. The 6th book that I'm currently working on is actually split up into volumes. Originally, all the volumes were going to be part of the same book, but it was just getting a little hefty. So we've split them up. And so I'm sort of like at the 4th book in that volume series. So I'm getting toward the end of the series. But it is also, and I want to pitch this for sure, the first 3 books are available in audiobook form, and not just any audiobook. We found some of the best and brightest voice actors to actually perform the audiobook. And when we decided we were going to do an audiobook, I was like, not big into audiobooks, don't particularly like them. If we're going to do this, I want multiple actors. So we have lots of different actors in the audiobook series, and we keep adding more. And so it's very much more like a radio show performance than it is an audiobook per se. So if you're skeptical about audiobooks, I encourage anybody to actually give it a shot, because it is definitely different than what you normally find in an audiobook. So go check that out.
And what is Colorworld?
So Colorworld is a story about a girl named Wendy. She has the ability to sense emotions when she touches people. So she's like an empath of sorts. She ends up going to this allergy study, and she comes out of it. She touches someone and they die. So something happened, something crazy. We don't know. Did they mean to make her a weapon, or was it a mistake? And so that's what you get to find out with Wendy in the first book.
Awesome. Yeah, I really, really, really appreciated that this book was not anything that I was expecting, but definitely like felt like the genre that I was that it was like. I felt like it was steeped in like the YA fantasy genre, but also like totally and wholly unexpected from anything that I've read in a long time.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear it. I definitely at times feel like it falls into the YA, but in actuality, I wrote it to appeal to adults, so like college age. But then at the same time, I love superheroes. I talk about like not liking Avengers movies, but I love comics, and I love superheroes. I love urban fantasy. I love your universe, the Godverse. Like I loved it as soon as I realized what was happening. I was like, this is where I want to live. So I love all of that stuff, and so all of it comes into play in some form or another. I essentially wrote the book that I always wanted to read, and so that's what Colorworld is.
Awesome. I love it. Okay, so last question is, give us a piece of advice that you would like us to leave with. It could be something that you have said already. It could be something you haven't said yet. Just like a little nugget that you want people to sort of leave this interview with, and then also where we can find you online, and then we'll say goodbye.
All right. Well, there's something that I tell my kids all the time, because, we're in the age of just unprecedented amounts of media. There are so much media available, more than any other time in history. And I think that's amazing. But I also think that, like technology, can be easily abused. And so I always tell my kids, I don't care what you're watching, whatever floats your boat, you watch that thing, but you should be able to tell me why you like that thing in detail. So when you're watching or reading something, ask yourself, like, what questions is this making me ask about myself? How do I view the world differently because of this thing? I feel like media is intended to help us improve as people, and stories are there so that we can learn from them and become better. It's not a consumable. It's not intended to be a consumable. And so my advice is like, don't live your life in consumption mode. Live your life in thoughtful mode, and trying to get every last ounce of value out of the stuff that you are consuming, because we are going to consume, and this is the age of media, and we need to take advantage of that.
Awesome. And where can we find you online?
So colorworldbooks.com is our website. And then literally any social media platform is at Colorworld Books. It's consistent across all social media.
Awesome. And I can say that, like, if you do at Colorworld Books, at least on Twitter, Rachel is the person who replies to you, because I wasn't sure who would be the replier person, but like I definitely have been getting into many conversations on Twitter with Rachel. So yeah, please go check out the book. It's quite good. They also we didn't get a chance to talk about it, but they also do really cool like metallic bookmarks and prints and other things. But like Colorworld book is the thing that everything else revolves around. So make sure to check that out too. Thank you so much for stopping by, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Russell. It's a pleasure.
So that was my interview with Colorworld's Rachel Kelly. If you like that information and you like that episode, please go check out Colorworld Books. In fact, there are a lot of bookmarks with my long-term collaborator, Eric Lervold, who has drawn my anthology pieces for Monsters and Other Scary Shit, Cthulhu is Hard to Spell 1 and 2, and our, fingers crossed, hopefully upcoming series soon, Sophia October. I've got several of those bookmarks, and they are awesome, as well as Colorworld, which is equally awesome. And if you like this show, please go subscribe, rate, and review it, or head on over to thecompletecreative.com and dive into all of our blog posts, epic blog posts, courses, and a whole lot more. That's it for me. Have a great day.